Perfect. So why don't we start with some introductions, and then I'll know how to introduce you. So
Yes.
whoever would like to introduce themselves and their pronouns.
I'm Alexis Enyart, and my pronouns are she and her. I am the conductor for As One. So I'm so excited to be here with Lyric Opera of the North, and so excited to be here right now on the Transgender. Very, very exciting.
Yay.
And I'm Lucas Bouk. I'm one of the singers in the As One opera here in Duluth. And I am now a baritone, but previous to my transition, I sang as a mezzo-soprano, and my pronouns are he, him.
Excellent.
And I'm Mark Hakes. I use they, them pronouns, and I am working with the company on this project as a consultant, but also have sung with Lyric Opera of the North in the chorus and then a couple of roles in the past, and am local to the Duluth area.
Awesome.
Awesome. I am Anna, she, her, and Faith Air, and I am the trans half of the transgender.
And I'm her dad, Cam. Use he, him pronouns. And the premise of our podcast is literally, us discussing her transition, but also looking at the broader topic of transgender issues and queer issues in general. And so once this is done, you should have a listen. So I will just going to do a little on-ramp here, and then we'll get rolling. So today on the podcast, we're so excited to have three guests. They are representing As One, which is an opera that's going to be popping up here in October in our area. And we'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that opera. Welcome, the three of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So whoever would like to maybe take this topic first, what is As One?
Well, As One is... First, it's really the coming-of-age story of an American woman. There are very few of those in opera in general. We really don't tell girls coming-of-age stories. And so this one is very powerful just in that sense. And in a lot of ways, the trans story is really secondary to it. And I think that's actually quite significant in that so often, transgender is an adjective before a noun, and the noun in this case is woman. And that's the more significant identity in this piece, the more significant aspect of it. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the word transgender that we leave behind this weight of the actual journey, the actual arrival. And so this piece is one that I hope that all women can relate to. And anyone who has ever been in a situation where things have been hard for them, or ever been in a situation where they have been told to be a way that they have to then work against. And basically, we are buried by the way that people tell us to behave, by the way that society expects us to be. And we uncover ourselves and break free. And Hannah is that character. She breaks free. She works beyond what it means to have to try to be perfect. She works beyond what it means to be stuck and confined and constricted. She becomes something absolutely herself. And it's not the labels. I mean, the show As One doesn't even have transgender in it. It's not a word. It's really significant that this piece is about human experience, and the trans experience and the transgender is the human experience. We are not separate from everyone else. And that is what the show does. It's not always perfect for trans justice, in that the role is often performed with cis performers, although not in this case to the same extent, as I'm sure Lucas will talk about. But it is an incredible piece for trans harmony. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you have to make strides towards understanding and towards tolerance before you can make full strides towards acceptance and complete understanding. So we're hoping that this piece means something and brings to the community of Duluth a story and a life that they may never have seen, may never have been aware of, and to say, we are not different from you are. We are the same as you. And to embrace the small ways that we are different without completely abandoning the fact that we are more similar than we are apart.
That's really powerful.
One of my favorite parts about the show, and the reason that I keep coming back to it, it's in 3 parts. And the first part is about Hannah's young childhood from like age 12 through teenage years. So you get a little bit of puberty stuff in there, but also just kind of general teenage struggles, which I think anyone can relate to. The middle section is Hannah coming into her own and really finding out who she is, and then taking those steps to really become herself, and doing that somewhat separate from her family. There's a really beautiful scene where she writes to her parents that she's not going home, and it's because she hasn't told them yet about her coming out. And so that's also something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to, a moment where you come into your own and make decisions like for you and for what's in your best interest, and for the type of person that you want to be and how you want to live in the world, regardless of how your upbringing told you should be. And then the third part, which I think audiences here in Duluth are going to adore, is Hannah goes on a mission to find herself, and she goes to Norway. So I know it's a little bit ridiculous because what trans person has the money to go to Norway? I mean, it's an opera. Right? The fact is, in this story, she goes to Norway, she goes to nature, she goes out on a lake, she goes into the woods, where she's relieved of these social constructs and these pressures. And she gets to be herself and find like this really steady and deep peace and joy in who she is. And I really hope that people here in this nature-loving community can also kind of identify with that element as well, that how healing nature can be, because it takes us away from all the excess noise of society.
That's amazing.
So that's what I like about the structure of the piece.
So I'm not as familiar with opera as I would like. I am a theater kid in my heart, but opera is not a place that I have put my own performance time. Is there something about opera that lends itself to this kind of storytelling, or is there, what is it about opera that makes this work?
Well, opera, first off, opera is it's a big scary word right now, right? And the biggest thing is that I have a dear friend and colleague, Lucia Lucas, and she's trans as well. And she talks, and she's like, how is it being an advocate? People ask her. And she says, oh, I do it all the time. Opera needs lots of advocates. Because it does. It really does need help with its image. Opera just means work. That's it. That's why when you say operator or like operational or any of these things, that's where it is. It just means work. So it's, first off, when we talk that way in the Italian, it doesn't need to be. So just like trying to take away some of that stigma around opera in general. But it's a very powerful art form because it's the combination of many different art forms. The trick about opera is that it is the only place that you'll see singing, acting, the full instrumentalist, and this put together of music, set design, in this case cinematography. Kimberly Reed is a fantastic documentarian, so there's a lot of beautiful work that goes into it. So it really is this complete art to have all these pieces together. And there's something about that that's very special. Hannah in this journey, and in the way that Hannah is portrayed, is one where she's kind of elusive as a character because she's portrayed by 2 different people. I always say this is an episodic monodrama for 2, which is quite rare. And in that, it's just this, as she's portrayed by multiple people, and also the viola in many ways, there's something about the piece that lends itself to this freedom of how can we be kind to ourselves? How can we relate to ourselves? How, for a while, the characters' names were Hannah before and Hannah after. It's really moved beyond that now to Hannah younger and Hannah older. and just navigating these relationships where it's how do we deal with ourselves? How do we deal with our past? Sometimes, you make these changes in your life and they either happen gradually or all at once. And you look back and you say, who was I? And there are many moments like that in this show where Hannah can look back on who was I. And I think it's really enhanced by the fact that you don't have one art medium working through it. You have basically all of them.
Yeah, and in this case, Hannah doesn't erase her old self. She makes peace with it, and I think that that's a message that that really resonated with me. Like, oh wait, that's possible. To really kind of be your full self now, and just kind of go to therapy and make peace with your past and move on. But yet, your past is in some ways always there with you. Even when you move on. So
I think that is a message that a lot of our trans listeners will definitely understand and know. There was a lot of lingo thrown around in there. I have some experience in both instrumentalist and musical theater. Opera was the one thing that I missed in my trifecta of music and theater. Is there a way that we can take these big concepts and these big terms? Hannah is portrayed by Hannah younger and Hannah older, the viola. How did all of these elements kind of create who Hannah the character is, and how that how that experience and how all of that comes together to create a whole character?
Of course, Hannah is at the beginning a bit of an every woman or an every trans, depending on what you're how you're watching. And a lot of her experiences are pretty universal. I mean, the beginning is she's on a bike doing a paper route. It's like nothing about the beginning is really that specific to her. It's only when she starts to come out and find herself and to navigate these different aspects where she has this moment in a cafe where she, for the first time, she says, I like being on this side of the table, because she's being flirted with by a boy instead of flirting the other way. And it's these moments, these small things that slowly start to make her specific, that start to make her Hannah. And I think that's the significance of Norway, is that everything up to that moment, when she goes to Norway, all of a sudden she's not an archetype for someone. She's Hannah. None of the rest of us have gone to Norway to do this, but Hannah did. This is her journey and her life. And so it's a combination of how do we create something that everyone can come to and be part of, and how do we make her her? And I think that's really significant, because it's not, the hope is not to erase or remove any of these experiences. Of course, it's to enhance them, but also to give a blank enough canvas that when people are watching Hannah, they say, that's me. And the thing is that, as I think is very noticeable, trans women look up to cis women all the time. Well, this is a chance for cis women to look up to trans women. Yes. Hannah is a character to look up to. And really, I think that's something very powerful in the way that it's written, is that she is admirable and she is charming and she's everything. And it makes her very special, because sometimes the trans experience is shown so alien, and we're always made other. We're always made different. But Hannah isn't different. Hannah is the same. And there's something really powerful about that, where it's like, just remember that, like, yes, we have our own things. We have our own culture. We have our own everything. But we are the same, and we want the same things: love, life, happiness, basic things. And Hannah somehow reminds people of that, who have forgotten, and who can treat us like we're so different from them. But I think there's a real powerful in just something that's a reminder that says, no, really, truly, you and I aren't different.
That's huge. I mean, bridging that gap. It makes me think of something, and we often talk on this podcast about media representation of trans folks, and in particular, the magic of then also having someone who's trans voicing or playing those characters, or drawing the art. That is so meaningful. But we have struggled to find a lot of examples of trans plays and operas and other types of performance art like this. So what does this mean for you to have this show available, to be able to be a part of it and to represent yourselves and your experiences in some ways?
I mean, it's a mixed bag because, it's wonderful to have this piece about a trans woman, but then you have people, like me, I am not a trans woman and I
Right.
don't identify as a woman, but here I'm part of this piece. So it's a catch-22, it's like, it's a wonderful first step forward, I think, for opera. It's the piece that made my parents understand my own coming out.
Wow.
They saw this piece and were like, oh, so you're like Hannah, but reverse.
I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that as well. Not like Hannah, but just in general.
So it is a really powerful piece. But so then so that's why I keep performing it and keep coming back to it. But then, yes, I do also want to see the next step too. I want to see more operas for trans women, for trans masculine, for non-binary performers, for all these different, beautiful, talented people that we have in our industry to be telling more stories. So I just want more.
And I'd like to take a moment to shout out that Loon, we are not the first trans performers on stage with Loon, trans or non-binary performers, which is remarkable because almost always this is the first time an opera company has ever even thought about this. Normally what I say is, we're the first, but we won't be the last. But in this case, we aren't the first. So I do want to take a second to specifically has a real commitment to creating safe spaces for people to exist for any show. And you are welcome to be at Loon far beyond just as one, which sometimes gets labeled as the trans show.
Right.
But it is, so anyway, it's much more than that. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows that this company here is a space where if you are in Duluth or in Minnesota, you do have a place where you can come and be involved and to be here. And I do think that you have a space where your voices can be heard.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that really is. And to think that, we have that in Duluth, a small community, I like to do a little bit of research and make sure that I'm not going into topics completely blind. And I read all of your bios and everything like that. And, it's crazy that a show like this in our tiny town was able to bring in international opera names. Lucas, Alexis, you guys are internationally known for your operas. And so it is incredible to me, one, to have you on our podcast, so thank you. But two, to know that you are in the city that I grew up in, middle of nowhere by Lake Superior, and performing this incredible show. I do really want to know, the three of you are trans, as I understand it. How has your experiences in especially this show, but overall changed how you might view the world? I know, Lucas, you brought up that you have been compared to Hannah, but in reverse. Have there been any other instances of that, of like, I'm a trans opera XYZ, and this is how it has really impacted the way I live my life?
That's a big question.
It is.
Yeah. So I had a career as a mezzo-soprano, and for a long time, I didn't come out until my 30s. So I lived as a woman, like a very feminine woman, and got married and had a kid and was the wife, mother, sister, all of those things, and always felt like something wasn't right. And I didn't really know what it was until 2017. So after I came out, I felt much better knowing like what the issue was. but then transitioning and coming out, I didn't want to take testosterone because I was having a singing career as a mezzo soprano.
Right.
So, I mean, there are a handful of people who were working to begin with and then transitioned, but not that many of us. Now there's a lot more people transitioning in their late teens and early 20s. So their singing voices, they're going to have that time to develop them. But what I guess I'm trying to say is I was already really established and had a very good vocal technique. And when the pandemic happened, I thought, hey, okay, this is the time. And what's been really wonderful is that my transition vocally has been really successful and really smooth and just really kind of slow and steady without a lot of drama. And I just really hope that that in and of itself can be an encouragement to anybody else who's considering hormone therapy for their gender expression, that there really are options out there to have successful vocal transitions and to take lessons or go to voice therapy and to really be able to do what you want with your voice. This is really possible and it's really something that you can do. So that's my message to anyone listening.
It's such a good message.
It is hard. It is hard. When I came out, there was nobody, and that was it. And that's not long ago. It's not that long ago at all. No, in terms of being a transgender opera conductor, I always say this. I hope people will tell me it's not true. But right now I'm the only one. I always say. And I've said that a lot of times, and I'm waiting for someone to be like, no, here's another.
Wait, here's our shout out. If you are a trans opera conductor, you know one, we're going to link you up with Alexis here.
What I started doing is I've been teaching conducting lessons for free to trans students for people who are musicians already and doing these things and who are like studying conducting, but I've been teaching them. And because we really do have to work to grow from the ground up as it was. I mean, the first woman conductor ever was in the opera pit, and she was there because you could hide her.
Right.
And she wasn't on stage with the symphony. The first trans conductor ever is Angela Morley. She's quite famous, but you don't know it. Angela Morley, very successful film arranger as well. She worked with John Williams. If you have watched Star Wars, little known film, when it's use the Force, Luke, she arranged that.
Wow.
She's the one who
Amazing.
Oh, thank you for that factoid. We are huge
I know,
geeks.
yeah. I had no idea. That's insane.
Angela Morley, first trans woman conductor and an arranger. She worked with jazz band mostly, but she worked in film. And why did she work in film? Because you don't see her. You may see her name, Angela Morley, but she's you can't tell. There are no videos of her conducting that I'm aware of. I've never seen one. So, it's a tricky thing to enter into a world where there's nobody. She died, unfortunately, just before I had come out. And even if I had just come out, I would have been writing to her and she'd be like, "Who are you?" But regardless, at this point, it's interesting. There are more young conductors. And things like this are happening who are working to get in, and I hope very soon that the answer is that they are in. But it's a challenge. The thing that trans people understand is that you have to exist in a world that is actively hostile to you, and it is actively hostile, and it's okay to acknowledge that and be aware that that's true. But it means that you have to be very good at creating space. And when you create space, you have to make space that other people can then exist in with you. And that's the hope, is that this creates a future. It creates more opportunity for the people who are coming up behind, or the people who are coming up as in like they're transitioning right now, but they're 40, who are also, it's interesting because this is like, what does it mean to be, from whatever generation? But it's its own thing where everyone is coming out in different ways and finding their moments and having these and trying to create opportunity for people to come up beyond, because there's no benefit of having an only. I aspire very much not to be the only trans opera conductor. Hopefully that there are many more that are just on the way, just over the horizon. And this piece, I'll say, I thought that it would be my life's work to conduct a piece about trans lives. This was the second thing I did after I graduated. I had done 7 shows by this point, but this was the second thing I did after the master's degree. And so in that way, I achieved my life's work at 23 years old. And
it's very impressive.
I do hold on to that, it's true. I've achieved everything I ever set out to do, and everything else is bonus. And I intend to rack up a lot of bonus points on the way. But it really is. This piece has held on to something where it's like, no matter what happens, I really did achieve everything I ever meant to do. So I'm very grateful for it. And what's nice is that the things that are happening now are beyond what I ever thought possible. And the operas, I've seen there are other trans operas being written, or operas about trans lives. And, they're seedlings still, but it's happening. And it's more than I ever thought. So I'm very grateful to see it. And I think the future is bright, even though I know that the world is falling apart in some ways. But I don't know. The world gets better every year, even as things get hard.
Well, it sounds like you're doing your part to continue to make a better world through your talents. And you both are so charming. So I'm just so excited to have you here and for people to hear these messages, because it's really, really powerful.
I mean, like, have you guys considered a public speaking career on top of your opera careers? Like, I typically with guests, I like to, give them like leading questions and stuff. I just throw spaghetti against the wall, and you're like, let me just eat this up and just give you so much good information.
Really profound thing about my life. And so we appreciate that. You make our jobs a lot easier when. So speaking of making our jobs easier, knowing that we're getting a little close to our time here, I'd love to know when this is happening here in town, so that we can help promote you, and any other parts of this performance that you'd like our audience to know about.
The performances are on Monday and Tuesday evening at the Duluth
Clyde
Ironworks in Duluth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clyde Ironworks in Duluth at 7 p.m.
Yes, and it should be very special. I think we were just there for the first time. I'm going to say, I love Duluth. Duluth is a fantastic city. I love, especially this week. This week, I don't know when you're all hearing this, but this is the week of fall in Duluth right now. Everything is perfectly gold and red in Duluth right now. So it is absolutely gorgeous right now. As one, I think it's going to be very special here, especially. You have Georgia Jacobson, who is coming back up. She is from Duluth herself, so you have local artists. We're coming in from all over the place. I'm from Chicago. Lucas is from New York. So you have this flying in. Amy Hutchison, our director, is from Chicago also. So none of us are all that far away, but we're so thrilled and so excited. I think I can speak for everyone to say to be in Minnesota now. And Lucas, I'll say one other thing is that he has been swimming in Lake Superior every day in a wetsuit.
All right, Lucas.
Damn, Lucas.
You're officially a Duluthian now.
I'm sorry. Now that you swam in Lake Superior, we have to keep you here. It's policy.
The lake will call you back no matter what.
I do want to check in. Mark, we haven't heard that much from you. Is there any points to anything that we've kind of talked about today that you really wanted to like put your brain into, any of your thoughts into?
Oh my gosh, I echo your statement that Alexis and Lucas should go on a speaking tour. It's fantastic. I don't think I have anything that I want to add. I think maybe the one thing that I would add just about my own experience is navigating opera and singing as a non-binary person. It is just really interesting, and I look forward to exploring how we change what we think about voice types and the roles that are open to them. Yeah, I just throw that into the conversation.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think that is something that all forms of media need to really take attention to, performative and other sorts of vocalist including medias, because the definition of who we are as people and what that means and what each role will carry does need to change. Lucas, you are a trans man playing the role of a trans woman, and so and Mark, you're the understudy, right, for that character, and you're a non-binary, and so I do just want to say, like, that is a point that I do want to hammer home, is this show is supposed to subvert all expectations and still be a story about an American woman. And I think that that's really cool, how you have so many people of all sorts of varieties playing this character.
Well, and things like this are changing anyway. Chicago Opera Theater, Stephanie Blythe played Don Jose. Don Jose is Carmen's tenor lover. And so anyway, she put on a beard. She came back here and said, okay,
Yeah,
these things are happening.
It was really interesting.
It's great. And so, I'm doing Tosca coming up, where again, the tenor lover is as a soprano. So going one different. And the thing is that we need to be having this conversation about the octave now, because it needs to happen a little bit with cis people, because unfortunately when it happens with cis people, it makes our lives a whole bunch easier. So it has a little bit with cis people now, so that there is this research and development basically to create space so that when push comes to shove, this is not a barrier for us, because it's a barrier. I see 20 years, 10 years on the horizon. And so this is one thing that, like, I know for sure that I'm actively working against right now. But I think that this is a reconsideration. So anything that we can do to look at recast and things like this, and not only does it give more opportunities, but we really do need to start getting answers to what does it sound like when we change the octave? What does it sound like? Could we have a baritone sing the role of Violetta in La Traviata? What would that be like? Why aren't we trying? Someone should try. And so anyway, that's what's happening, is these are really important things that need to start so that we're ready. And I think that's what's happening next.
Yeah. Honestly, I just want to say I think you guys should try. I will follow you around the country and go to each of your shows as you progress this path forward for trans people and all
Mark,
people.
This is the day Anna became an opera groupie. And
like I said, I need opera to finish my trifecta.
Yes, welcome to the team. Well, remind people that it's not very scary, please.
Yes,
it's not.
If we get anything out of this,
yes, like, listeners, please, if you are at all interested in the show, go check it out. I know that there's a lot of lingo and a lot of language that might have not been completely understandable for me even, and I am from this world. So please, it's supposed to be something that we can all go and enjoy. And I really think that if you think that the story would be something that you'd want to see, if you want to go and support these amazing people, please do.
And everything has subtitles now. So you remember when everyone was watching Squid Game in Korean? Opera is basically the same.
There you go.
The takeaway. Here's the quote. Opera is basically Squid Game.
That's gonna be it. That's gonna be in some of our merch there.
That might be the title of the episode. I think you just hit it.
Oh my gosh. I want to say, as we're running out of time here, I want to say one huge thank you to Alexis, Lucas, and Mark for showing up tonight and being so willing to share your stories, talk so personally, and honestly, like, please keep up the amazing work you're doing. It is something that is needed and is so incredible to see.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right.